In this exercise, we're going to explore the end-to-end testing of Angular applications using Protractor. Before we proceed with this exercise, make sure that you have completed the previous exercise on unit testing, because we have installed some modules in the previous exercise, and these are required also for the current exercise, specifically Angular Mocks and Jasmine. End-to-end tests in Protractor are also specified using the Jasmine syntax. Protractor makes use of your browsers in order to run the tests. In addition, Protractor takes the help of another package called Selenium to be able to interact with the browsers. Now, the more recent version of Protractors allow you to directly interact with some browsers, specifically Chrome. And in fact, we're going to use that approach rather than using Selenium to be able to interact with your browsers. And I'm using Chrome as the browser for carrying out the end-to-end tests. So to begin, let's first install Protractor. So at the command prompt, type sudo npm install protractor -g, and then complete the installation of the Protractor. Once the installation is complete, then we need to update the web drivers. So this is required in case you're using Selenium, but in any case, let's carry out the update. To do that, at the command prompt, type WebDriver Manager update, and then let it complete the updating of the drivers for various browsers. Next, make sure that you are running the JSON server on your machine. So go to wherever you stored the JSON server configuration information, the db.json file, and start up JSON server, because we need that in order for our application to work correctly. And for the end-to-end tests to be carried out, the application needs to access the server to download the JSON data. So make sure that the JSON server is up and running, and leave the terminal around. So you may need to start up multiple terminals in order to keep things going. In OS X, I'm using multiple tabs in my terminal application to have the multiple things running. The third thing that you need to do is also to have your application itself being served up. Now, we have already configured Gulp to keep track of, to be able to serve our application. So we will go to the Confusion folder and then do Gulp watch in order to start up the server to serve up our application. Now, this will serve our application at the port number 3001. Remember, port number 3000 on our local host, the JSON server is running. So the Gulp will serve up the web application at port number 3001. So go to the Confusion folder, and then type Gulp watch, and let Gulp start up the server that serves up your web application. You would see that your web application opens up in your default browser and shows up the information there. Now everything is configured for your end-to-end tests to be configured and run. Next, go to the test folder that you have created earlier, and then in there create a new file and name it as protractor.conf.js. Again, you see the naming convention that we are using, conf.js for configuration files, and then either Karma or Protractor. So once you have the Protractor conf.js file open, let's start configuring our protractor for running the end-to-end tests. Now I have included all the code that I need into the protractor conf.js file to configure my protractor. This is a simple configuration that I have done just to be able to run a simple end-to-end test. So in configuring the protractor, I say exports.config and then all scripts timeout and specs. This specs is where we specify where our end-to-end tests exist. So I have specified this as e2e/star.js. So I would need to create a folder under the test folder named e2e and then put all my end-to-end tests, the JavaScript files, in there. And the capabilities, I'm using only the Chrome browser, so I specify the Chrome browser. The base URL, I specify it as http://localhost 3001. Now, make sure that when you used Gulp Watch, your Gulp server has been started up at port number 3001. If it is a different port number, make sure to configure this base URL as localhost : the port number where your Gulp server is serving up the Angular application. I specify framework as Jasmine, direct connect as true, which means that I am not using the Selenium web drivers. Instead, I am directly connecting to Chrome. Chrome allows me to interact directly with Protractor, so that's why I'm using that approach here. And Jasmine, the default timeout interval as 30,000. So these are some basic configurations that I have done for my Protractor to carry out the tests. So let's save these changes. Now we need to create an actual end-to-end test. Next, under the test folder, create a new folder named as end-to-end or E2E. We are going to store our end-to-end tests inside this folder. In the end-to-end test folder, create a new file and name it as scenarios.js. Now this scenarios.js file will contain our end-to-end test configuration. Let's start configuring our first end-to-end test. So in this file, first add in the code and say, again, note that I am using Jasmine's syntax for specifying things. So that's why I said describe confusion app E2E testing. It makes it more easy for us to understand what we are doing in here. And so inside this describe, I'm going to now set up the end-to-end tests. Next, I add in the code to ensure that when I try to access the server from Protractor, I am being redirected to index.html page. We have configured the base URL in protractor.conf.js. So when I try to access my server at the base URL, I am being redirected to index.html page. So that's what I am ensuring. And then also I check expect browser get location absolute URL to match /. So that is where I am to begin my end-to-end tests. Next, I configure a very simple end-to-end test. In this test, I am making sure that I go to the index.html #/. So this is the starting point for our single page application. And then at that point, I check to make sure that the browser's title is set to restaurant confusion. Remember, that's how we configure our index.html page. So that's the first simple test I am carrying out. So when I access my browser, and I will be able to check that the title for my page has been set up correctly in this case. After that, I am carrying out one more test. In this test, I am going to navigate to the menu/0 location. So this is where I am accessing the very first dish in the list of dishes. So I can simply say describe menu 0 item, and then I'm going to check a few things on the menu 0 item. So before each, remember the use of the before each, before you carry out the tests, make sure that you go to this particular location. So get index HTML hashtag / menu 0. So I am making my application, the protractor, to navigate to the menu 0 item. So this is the first dish in my list there. So after I do that, I make a few tests on this. So first test, I'm saying it should have a name. So this dish should have a name. So I say var name element by binding dish.name, expect name get text to equal this thing. This is the information, the text information that is contained inside the h3 tag inside my media object, where I specify this information. Look back at the code in the template that you have written. That is exactly how it is configured. Okay, so that's the first test that I'm carrying out. The next test, a little bit of formatting issues, so let me reformat it here. So the second test that I'm carrying out is it should show the number of comments as. Okay, in that example, in my JSON db.json file, I have configured 5 comments there. So I am checking to make sure that when my browser accessed the server and then got hold of the comments from the server, then there were 5 comments in there. So that's the next test I'm going to expect element all by repeater comment in dish.comments. Remember that this is the ng repeat configuration that I used in order to repeat the list of media objects in my construction of my menu. So I am making sure that, rather construction of my comments for that particular dish. So that's what I am checking here. So make sure that the count of these is equal to 5. So there are 5 comments for that particular item. So note how we specify element all by repeater comment in dish comments. And then I'm using the count method of that to be able to get how many are there in that particular list of comments. The last test, what I'm going to do is in this test, I'm going to type in using protractor. I'm going to type in some information into the selection input box that we have in the comments. I'm going to make it order the comments by the author. So how do I type in this information in the input box? Obviously, you can't do it by hand. So you have to make protractor automatically do that for you. So to do that, look at the way the test is configured. It should show the first comment author as. So I will reorder and then check the name of the author of the very first comment. I know how it should look like because I know what the end data looks like. So I can verify that my application is behaving the way it is supposed to behave. So I specify element by model order text send keys author. So here I'm saying find the element which is configured by the ng model containing order text. So that's what we used for the input field in the list of comments that we configured. So for the order text, when I say send keys, this set of characters are going to be typed in by protractor into that input box in there. So when that is typed in, my comments will automatically reorder themselves based on the author's names. And then after that, I say expect element all by repeater comment in dish comments. We have seen that already. Count equal to 5. I'm again checking to make sure that there are still 5 comments there in that list. Then I'm saying var author element all by repeater comment in dish comments dot first element by binding comment dot author. So I am extracting the author's name from the first element in the list of elements that have been configured using comment in dash comments. So from the first author, then next after that I say expect author get text. I extract the text and then I check to contain 25 cent. Now you can actually verify this by typing author into your browser, and then you would see that the very first comment will be by the author name 25 cent. So this way I am carrying out the test and making sure that my comments are properly ordered. This is one of the tests, end-to-end tests that I can carry out. Like that, I can configure many other tests in the scenarios.js file to carry out several other tests on that page. Not only that page, I can navigate to any other page in my application and then carry out appropriate tests of what I would expect to see in those pages. So using these elements, send keys, then count equal to the Jasmine way of configuring all these, I am able to automatically do some input to the web application and then carry out all the tests. Now, a real challenge would be for you to be able to type in something into the form that we have. Forms, we have several forms in our web application. Think about how you're going to be able to manually, or rather automatically type in information into the form fields of, for example, your feedback form, submit the form, and then go back and check to see if the form has been correctly submitted. That would be a real challenge for you to try out. Be my guest. I'm sure if you can do that, you have mastered how to do end-to-end testing. So next, let's now run the actual test and see how it runs on our application. When you run this test, you would see that this application will open up a Chrome browser and then carry out a few things and then shut down the Chrome browser automatically for you. Let's do that next. Now let's go back to the terminal and then carry out the test. Now, if you have installed Protractor, you may want to restart your command window, or in OS X or Linux, quit your terminal and then restart that particular terminal window. Otherwise, it won't recognize the fact that the Protractor has been installed. You might face that problem. So once you restart, then at the command prompt, type protractor conf.js. Make sure that you are in the test folder. And I just realized I'm not in the test folder. So let me move to the test folder and then type protractor conf.js. And you would see that it will carry out the end-to-end tests, and then it fails because somewhere I have configured it to look for 7 rather than 5 in the number of comments. Let me go back and have a look at the code and see where the problem is. You know what? I just realized that in one of the previous exercises, we had actually typed in a couple of comments in there. So make sure to check your db.json file to see how many comments are there for your particular dish. I noticed that I have 7 comments in my dish. So I need to go back and reconfigure my test. By all means, this is a good way for me to illustrate to you where problems occur. Go back to your tests, and then I would reconfigure that to say count equal to 7, and then the count also equal to 7. Now my test should pass correctly. The ordering by author would still have 25 cent as the first author, because the other things that I typed in had my name there, and my name doesn't come as the first name in the list of comments there. going back to the terminal, let me again rerun my end-to-end test. Now, all my tests passed successfully. And so I am satisfied that this particular test, end-to-end test, was run correctly. Now, although I didn't show you the browser window starting up on the screen, your browser will momentarily start up, the Chrome browser, and then carry out the test and then automatically shut itself down. So you might see that happen on the screen. Just to show you that the protractor, when it runs the test, it starts up a Chrome browser. I have moved my terminal aside a little bit and then type in the protractor command there, and then you will see the Chrome browser open up and flash a few times and then shut itself down automatically. So this is protractor automatically starting your browser and then carrying out the tests. So you would see that happen on your machine. Because of the size of the screen, I am not able to show both of them simultaneously on the screen. With that, we have completed the end-to-end test. In this exercise, you have learned how to configure end-to-end test and carry out end-to-end tests using the protractor